Hello, hello, my beauties and bees. Welcome once again to Cryptic Corner, where we explore the world of the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. I'm your host, Miss Bumblebee, and welcome to the show. We're continuing this fairy run for March. So today, by vote, we are covering a particular fairy hound. Now, this fairy hound has lots of offshoots of different lore from different areas, which is something you have a lot of in the British Isles, right? Every moor has a different version of the same, a different name and slightly varied version of the same type of monster. And today's creature feature is no different. It's going to be known by different regional names, and it's going to be, why is it saying San Pedro Mummy? That's not even on here. Oh, there we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so today we're talking about the QC. Now, the QC is different than the Kate She that we've covered before when we covered Big Ears and the mystery cats of Scotland. The mystery cats of Scotland were quite interesting, but the canine is a little bit more overtly aggressive, right? Well, when it came to the Kate She, there's a lot of summoning and stuff going on. You had to really put in the effort. This cat wanted you to be like, it's like, if you're not serious, then don't even call me, because I want to see that you're going to roast all these cats and you're going to do all this stuff for all these hours until you drive yourself nuts, and then we can talk. Whereas the Kyushi is more like, oh, you didn't summon me? Well, here I am anyway. Better run. I'm a big, green, mean dog, and I'm going to rip you limb from limb. But there's different versions of it, like I said. So let's get started.
Deep within the dark and misty woodlands, the Scottish Highlands, there lurks a great beast, a creature whom, despite his great size, moves swiftly and with utter silence. This fey being produces untold dread in the hearts of those unfortunate enough to stumble across it. This spirit, known to be an omen of death by the locals, is the great fairy dog, the Coo-Shee.
Alright, so I don't know how to pronounce this first word. I think it's lay, but lay wolf, maybe. And the reason I know this word is like because the lay of Bellarine and things like that. Like, I was just talking about, I'm a big Lord of the Rings nerd, so I get a little touch of that in Sindar. Sindar likes to use a little bit of, yeah, it's like a Celtic version of Quindy. And if you know what I'm talking about, cool. If you don't, that's okay.
The Coo-Shee is a mostly malevolent fairy. It commonly takes the form of a giant spectral dog and can be found in the Highlands.
Oh, Sue, they're on my list. The Green Children of Woolpit are on the list. We will talk about them eventually. They will come around, I promise.
Of Scotland, preferring to live in the dense forests and make its lair in caves and rocky outcrops. It is said to be the size.
Let me know if the audio is balanced too, because that's been the bane. That's why I'm so far behind. That is why I'm so far behind. I'll pull my videos, right, and go into edit them, and be like, oh my god, the audio is so out of balance. I want to cry. Yeah, they're called the Woolpit children, or the Green Children of the Woolpit. Yeah, when I was a kid, I actually wrote a comic book where the main characters were the brother and sister, and they did like paranormal investigations. They grew up. So, yeah, maybe I should revisit that.
Size of a large cow or bull, and is coated in dark green fur. Some of these beasts have long tails, which they coil over their back, while others have a flat braided tail. Many of the stories tell that the fairy dog has glowing yellow eyes, which can be seen in the
glowing yellow eyes, and then shows a picture of one with green eyes. Okay.
Darkness as it stalks its prey.
And it's not always green. I will say that. People asking about why it's green and stuff. I think probably the older version of it was more like a forest spirit. He's going to explain a little bit more about it in different versions of it. But there's some of them that are black. And we are going to talk about like black shock and that stuff today too. So, yeah, stick around.
There are very few, if any, creatures that invoke more terror than the Kushi, for it is said to feast on human souls.
That's the funny thing. I talk to my twin brother all the time. I have an identical twin brother about how it was so obvious when we were kids that I was trans. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And like every time that we made like characters, there was always a set of twins, because we always were trying to make comic books together and stuff. We never could get our shit together, but we're both really good artists. Like but anyway, he's actually a professional artist now. But whenever we'd make brother and sister, or whenever we'd make a team of characters, and then we'd have our XPs in the team, it was always a brother and sister. Twin brother and sister. And he's like, no, I don't know. I mean, I'd always make like male characters that I'd identify with too, but we'd always have that dynamic in there. It's so funny. And he's like, I don't know. I just never saw the signs. It's like, okay.
Its cousin, the devious Kachi, will steal a human soul if the body is left unattended. But the Kushi is far more aggressive.
And let me tell you, Keishi is my one of my favorite of these lesser gods, or whatever you want to call them, these tribal gods, or native spirits, or whatever. Of all of them, from all around the world, Keishi is my favorite. I've researched all the lore and stuff on it. It's such a weird creature. So if you haven't watched that one, go back and watch it, because it was a good episode. I was really whether or not it was presented well, I don't know, but you can tell I'm really enjoying covering the topic. And then when I went from that to the Kellis cat is something else that I put a lot of research into.
And ferocious, it would actively hunt its prey. Although mostly silent, the beast would sometimes let out 3 hideous howls. These gargantuan barks could be heard for miles around, and if you were ever to hear one, then run with all the speed you can muster, for you must get to safety before the 3rd bark.
I wonder if the Sandals says, I wonder if a Scottish wolf monster has stolen people's souls, because I don't think people have souls. Well, that's a fair point. There's another Scottish wolf creature, or canid creature, that I'm not going to talk about today because it deserves its own video. It's called the Wolver, and if you don't know what it is, it's super interesting. But it's not what you think. The name of it and everything, you will not expect the characteristics and behavior of this creature to be what they are.
Is heard, or your soul is fair game. Some accounts say that after the 3rd bark, the Kushi would hunt down the unfortunate Highlander and tear the very soul from his body. Others say that the 3rd bark itself.
Whenever they say tear the soul from the body, I always imagine it ripping the bottom of someone's feet off. I don't know, because that's like, oh, it's gonna tear out your soul. It's like, the bottom of my feet, ow. But yeah, because I don't do souls either. So what exactly it could be devouring is not clear.
It caused so much fear and terror that upon hearing it, the victim would die from sheer horror alone. The Kushi, on most occasions, would take the souls of its victims to the fairy realm, and there the soul would be trapped forever. But if the victim was a nursing mother, she would be brought to the fairy hill alive, and forced to produce milk for the old gods, the Doinishi.
Can that happen to me? I want to freaking live in a fairy mound and produce milk for the Donshi. Where do I sign up for this life? It sounds lit. I bet they're like dancing and playing music all the time, and don't want to oversell the fairy world. I know it's not all flowers and rainbows, but which is, sometimes how it's presented, especially this time of year, specifically flowers and rainbows. There's a dark side to fairy lore, right? There's they weren't They were as much monsters hiding in the wilderness as they were beautiful little creatures that want to dance with you around the mushroom ring. They would, yeah, eating your soul was a popular thing, or stealing your soul was what they wanted to do. They'd take you to these mounds. The mounds are real. They're there. A lot of them are like native Britain populations that are extinct now and that were buried in these mounds, but they are the Tuatha De Danann, which the old gods, and yeah, they're tricksters and shapeshifters and spellcasters, and humans went to war with them. Like there's a rich history of the war between humans and the Tuatha De Danann before the Roman Empire came, and there's this blurring of the line between conquering real indigenous people by Celtic invaders and actual folklore about magic and stuff. So yeah.
Many a tale of the Kushi has been told around a warm fire on a cold winter's night in Scotland. One of the oldest surviving stories takes place in the small western isle of Benbecula. It was during the 14th century when the island was ruled.
Benbecula. That sounds awesome. I am Benbecula. But you'd have to say it like a Scottishman. I don't know how you'd say Benbecula Scottish, like Benbecula, maybe like that. My fake Scottish is probably as bad as my fake Carpathian, but give me a break, all right? I'm not getting paid for that. Oh, I am getting paid for this.
By the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. On a dark and dreary night,
did he just say the McDonald's Clan Ronald?
Donald's men, Donalds of Clan. It was during the 14th century when the island was ruled by the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. On a dark and dreary night, two of MacDonald's men.
The MacDonalds of Clan Ronald. Oh my. So the real origins of McDonald's goes back to Benbecula. Benbecula? Yeah.
Were sitting and talking by the small fire. It was their duty that evening to tend to the calves, which were kept in a small barn. The pair were taking a break and swapping stories when two colossal dogs sprang from the dense woodland and ran straight towards them. Paralysed with fear, neither man could move as the spectral hounds came into the firelight.
So, Ember, the Tuatha they were never really considered human. I think they were human, like historically they were a human race, but they weren't. They're the Fomori too, who were also not considered human. You got who had the big eye? Og. There's a one character who has a big eye that you can open up and it blast everybody like Cyclops. And then there was Dagda, who could like eat anything. He had a big old belly. He was one of the Tuatha De Danann, or the Dagda, as they sometimes put it. But yeah, there's a few different weird monster like figures, but a lot of them are just like people. Most of them are people.
They stopped suddenly. It was only then that the men could see the Kushi were collared. The chain that tethered the fey dogs was made from a strange yet beautiful metal, and inlaid with all colours of precious stones. A haunting voice boomed out of the darkness. Slender Fae, Mountain Traveller, Black Fairy, Lucky Treasure, Grey Hound, Seek Beyond. After these strange words, the Kushi turned and left slowly. Once the dogs were out of sight, the men recovered their senses, but were
Why is he throwing rocks, though? Is he throwing a rock at the dog? Don't throw rocks at dogs. But I'm wondering if the dog was supposed to have said this, or if it was just a voice from beyond, maybe from the forest. Maybe the dog's master was calling them.
compelled to follow the fey creatures. The curious pair tracked the dogs through the thick forest and eventually came upon a clearing. There in the night sky was a vision beyond any of their wildest dreams. They beheld the Slua, or great procession of the Fae. It would seem that the Doinashi were
It's the elves, Mr. Frodo. We're traveling to the west.
hunting, as each of the enchanted beings were accompanied by their own kushi, and upon their arms were great hawks. The men were mesmerised by the spectacle before them. Later, they said that the sound of bells could be heard, and that the Fae were calling upon their dogs. The ethereal host marched towards the west, out over the great sea, in search of some unknown game or prey. The two men, still in awe of the ancient spirits, wished them luck with the hunt and returned to the caves. The pair would make their strange encounter quite well known, and it was recorded in the journal of an unknown Gallic scholar. Another tale comes from further south.
So most of this folklore is oral legends that are passed down, right? It's not going to be. There's not a lot of modern day sightings and things of the QC, but the black dog phenomenon does continue, and we will talk about that.
One morning on the island of Tyree, as an islander was walking along a coastal path near Canavra, he spotted a huge dog laying next to a sand dune. Instantly, the man knew what he was looking upon and was filled with terror, yet intensely curious, since it was very unlike a kushi to be out during the daytime, knowing he was far too close to...
I'm thinking he found like a seal that was molting. What do you think? This sounds like the story about a seal that was molting.
outrun the beast. He turned slowly and, walking as softly as he could,
I don't know.
returned from the direction he had come. It would seem the islander had been incredibly lucky. Either that, or the mysterious beast knew his time had not come. The next day, the man boasted to the other islanders of his harrowing escape from the dreaded kushi. Many were unwilling to believe that the dog was out during the day, and thought the man had taken leave of his senses. The islander led the unbelievers to the dune. Of course, by this time the great dog had gone, but all around in the sand were paw prints, far larger than the hand of a man. They all now knew it could only have been the fairy dog.
So, I kind of wonder if it's not folk memory of bears, because there were brown bears in Scotland, marginally at least, until... When did brown bears go extinct in Scotland? Let me Google it. I don't want to misspeak. When did brown bears go extinct in Scotland? When did they go extinct? The 10th century. So yeah, fairly recently. There were Vikings raiding Scotland by this time. So yeah, so maybe this is folk memories of a subspecies of brown bear. Maybe they had some unique coloration in this area, you know, like we have with the spirit bears now. I'm just speculating here. There were wolves too, and wolves. When did wolves go extinct? I think that was much later. When did wolves? The last wolf killed in Scotland was in 1860. Yeah, so it's been a minute. Or not 1860, 1680. I said that backwards. Damn my my transposing brain. 1680. So about 680 years after the brown bear. So there are a lot of creatures that used to live in Scotland that could have been deified and mysticized. If we can deify and mysticize the ancient people that used to live in a place based on seeing their mounds and ancient stories of wars with them, why wouldn't we do that about the animals that lived in the region too?
This was not a great shock to the locals, as the kushi had been seen in Tyree on many occasions. In fact, on another stretch of coast, there was a large cavern, known as the lair of the fairy dog. One day, a young shepherd was out with his 2 collies tending to his flock on the coast. Suddenly a wild storm whipped up, and the boy ran to a nearby cave for shelter. While waiting for the rain and wind to calm, the boy went deeper into the cavern. Soon he would hear a faint yelping, and stumbled upon 2 large dogs. They were dark green in colour, but friendly of temperament. From the way they were acting, it seemed as if they were only pups, yet both far outsized the collies. The shepherd sat a while and watched the pups at play. He could feel that these dogs meant him no harm. After a while,
I want giant green puppies, please.
an uneasy thought crept into the boy's mind. What if the mother was to return? Quickly, he got up and headed back.
You know, it was Star Song. It was so bad I actually went and got tested to see if I had something going on with my wiring that was making me transpose numbers like that. I still do. I all the time. It makes it hard for me to do my stuff, my personal stuff, finances and whatnot.
Back out into the storm. It was then that the shepherd heard a horrific bark. Loud enough was the sound that the shepherd felt it in his chest. Fearing he had angered the Kushi, the boy ran with all the speed and strength that he could muster. Up from the beach, through the fields, leaving his sheep behind, the boy ran at full sprint. The moment his eyes spotted a small shaylin in the distance,
head cheese is just a name for face meat. It's this part, and anything you can get from up in here, and the jaw muscle, especially back in here. Nom nom.
Second, far louder bark emanated from all around him. It hit the boy with such force he was thrown to the ground. Grasping and clawing, the boy pulled himself from the mud and dashed towards the shaylin.
Evil Dead!
Throwing himself against the door, he violently entered the safety of the hut, mere seconds before the third bark sounded. Crippled with terror, the poor boy slept.
So you get 3 barks with the QG. I wonder how that stacks up against like a banshee.
In the shaylin overnight, and in the morning, cautiously returned to try and find his flock. The sheep were gone without a trace, but the 2 collies were in good health and overjoyed to see their master. It would seem that the Kushi bore no ill intent to its much smaller kin. The magical and unearthly properties of the fairy dog were well known. It was said that even the smallest part of the Kushi held great power. This was once discovered by a farmer from the Isle of Lewis, who on one afternoon did come across a large tooth found in his barn. It seemed to be the tooth of a dog, but far larger than any the man had seen. The farmer consulted with a local wise woman, and it was decided.
I wonder if he found like a Smilodon tooth or a bear tooth, maybe?
That the lone tooth did indeed belong to the Kushi, a rare and valuable curiosity indeed. The tooth possessed strange, arcane powers. When it was placed in drinking water, it would cure all ills affecting the cattle. It also acted as a charm, which would ward off evil spirits or witches. The tooth was handed down throughout the family for many generations. It was regarded as a precious heirloom, and the last known location of the magical tooth was in Canada, in the possession of an old widow, but that was many years ago. The Kushi of Scotland.
In Canada, huh? Need to track down this magic tooth. Like I said, I think it's probably and then all these people claiming to have it, it's probably not all the same fossil, but I imagine it's probably the fossil of a large, maybe a large canid, but probably more likely a large felid or a bear. Would be my speculation.
Has much in common with the other spectral dogs that are commonplace in British and Irish folklore. In the Irish Celtic.
Yeah, I was talking. Well, the artifact itself is in Canada, so I don't think the artifact itself necessarily has to be from Scotland. I think that they just add the folklore onto it. Yeah. Yeah, but no, there was no. The Smilodon was not in Eurasia. Smilodon was, or who lived there instead? There was the Homotherium that dominated in Asia. I don't know if Homotherium lived as far north as Scotland though. Scotland, most up until about 12,000 years ago, Scotland's been under ice pretty much the whole time. There wasn't anything living there. That's why all their fossils and stuff are going to be mostly they're going to be subfossils, are going to be from within the last 12,000 years or so. I think that there weren't any big cats in the UK. There were big lynx. They had a big subspecies of lynx that lived in the UK on the British on the island, big island. There was there were bears, of course. Seals and stuff come up on the beaches too, and they have big canines. I want to say it was a bear. That would be my speculation, or maybe a wolf, because there were wolves, of course. You know, yeah, a big lynx. I don't think a lynx. Generally, I don't think a lynx having bigger teeth than a large hound, though. Yeah, there were giant elk too, with the big horns or big antlers. I mean, whoosh, they're just monstrous. If you ever get a chance to see one, they're crazy big.
Celtic tradition. A similar fairy dog exists. This beast is also known as the Cúisí, yet spelt in the Irish fashion. It is said to be a great black-furred creature, and is also known to be a harbinger of death. The Cunanon is a spectral hound of the Welsh mythology. They were creatures of the other world, and were known to take part in the wild hunt. Descriptions and mentions of this so-called wild hunt can be found in much of Northern European folklore, and is very similar to the march of the Doineshi that the MacDonald men saw that night.
Well, the wild hunt's a little more violent, right? The wild hunt is reported to be, you'll hear violent hoofbeats, baying hounds, men shouting, but not see anything. And sometimes there will be fog or even lightning. You may see fairy lights or shadows of horses, men, and hounds, but nothing corporeal.
Then there is the Churchyard Grim of English folklore.
Yeah, Megaloceros wasn't even really an elk. It was just it's a big deer. It's it's a big relative of the fallow deer, I want to say. But the rack on that thing, yeah.
A large black ghostly hound, said to protect the church and its burial grounds. It's thought that the Grim is heavily influenced by Finnish and Norse mythology. The protective aspect of the Grim comes from a disturbing practice of early European Christianity, where a black dog would be buried alive at the north end of a church in the hope that it would become a guardian spirit. The colour of the Cúisí makes it unique when compared with these other canines of folklore. The green colour is an important point, as in Scotland that colour is commonly associated with the Doineshi, or fairies of old, and shows a definite link with the fairy realm. I will leave you now with a simple word of warning. If you are out walking in the beautiful woodlands of Scotland and hear a terrifying bark, run. Thank you for listening.
I am not going to run from a good boy if I'm in the woods walking. Dogs can bark if they want to. They're happy. If a doggy's happy and barking, I'm not going to run. Alright, so that channel was, the Oth Wolf. Lay Wolf, maybe? I will die trying to pet this animal. Exactly. You're not going to keep me from approaching this good boy. I got another video here. I'm going to just kind of fill in some of the blanks about other epic monster canines. So let's dive right in.
Throughout time, people across the world told each other tales of how they came to be, of heroes and monsters, romance and tragedy, death and rebirth.
Yeah, this is like a
mythology
mythology
helped
channel.
shape the ancient world, explaining the unexplainable. This is Mythology Unleashed.
Unleashed. That was epic. I am like enamored.
Since the Paleolithic era, dogs have been faithful and loving companions to humanity. Being the oldest domesticated animals in history, it comes as no surprise that man's best friend has been featured in countless myths and legends. But some of the most famous tales of dogs come from paranormal and scary stories, portraying them as ghostly figures,
I like that art,
eerie
too.
beasts associated with the night,
Like a will-o'-the-wisp with a crow sitting on its back. Sweet.
and heavy storms, haunting rural regions and deserted areas, appearing as if from nowhere, and then vanishing without a trace. If one were to encounter a spectral hound, whether solitary or in a group, more often than not, the result would be disastrous, even deadly. No one knows exactly where the concept of ghost dogs comes from, as many cultures have associated dogs with
Well, I mean, I imagine it probably, well, animism, right? It's probably where it starts. People thinking that that there's spirit inside of everything, all living things, all inanimate things, just everything's got some kind of spirit or energy inside of it. And then when your doggo dies and you dream about him, that's the doggo coming to visit you, same as your loved ones. So that must be his spirit and energy.
death and the afterlife. Perhaps the legends of hellhounds, guardians of the underworld such as Cerberus from Greek mythology, or Garm of Norse mythology, had a hand in perpetuating the ghost dog myth. Whatever the origin, legends of ghost dogs are told all over Europe, namely in various parts of England, as well as the United States. Unlike many other monsters of legend, who often have outlandish and frightening appearances, a ghost dog looks like an ordinary dog, making them appear unassuming and even safe to approach.
Until...
However, nearly all accounts depict them as being notably large in size, with fur as dark as night, and eyes that glow like embers.
Ember, how do you glow so we can get a good idea of how the ghost dog's eyes glow? Is Ember still here? They're talking about you on the video and you're not... Yeah, I need to know how you glow. I'm going to put on some lip gloss while I'm listening
As they
to
are
this.
non-corporeal, ghost dogs are not subject to the laws of nature or physics. They leave no paw prints, can appear and disappear in the blink of an eye, may pass through solid objects or hover in the air. Weapons of any kind were said to pass through them with no effect, yet they may be capable of scratching people, animals, or property with their claws, leaving a scorching burn on anything that it touches. Animals.
There's a famous case about this, too, about one that comes into a church. And I might pull that up, too, just a second. If it's not covered on this video. I only watched the first part of this video. Yeah, in France in 18... And the door still has scars on it. Yeah, Trinity Church in Blythe, England, 1577. We will look that up in just a minute. If
Are
it's
said to
not
be
covered
sensitive
here.
to their presence. Horses and mortal dogs, in particular, are said to react defensively or even violently when their presence is sensed. These spectral hounds have been sighted on many lonely paths at night or at twilight, in both forests and fields, as well as cities, crossroads, churchyards, and cemeteries. Usually alone, but occasionally have been said to hunt in pairs or even packs. What is different about the many
So sometimes, like the Kyushi that we just talked about being green and stuff, that's kind of a unique one. Most of them are black. Most of these dogs in this folklore are black with like red eyes.
incarnations of these canine apparitions is just what exactly happens should one come face to face with them. First and foremost, the ghost dog is most often seen as a harbinger of doom. Misfortune or tragedy is almost guaranteed to befall the person whose path they cross. The hanging hills of Meriden...
So doom's not always a bad thing either. Like etymologically, not to do anything with bugs. Etymologically, doom just means it's the same. It's another word for like your fate or your destiny. What's going to happen to you regardless. Um, like seal your doom and stuff. It's only recently that's become like it means a bad fate. I mean something bad's gonna happen. That's not what doom or means in general context. And so I guess it comes from the expression like, oh, we're all doomed, but we are all doomed. You know, we're set on our path. Our feet are on or you can't break your feet off the tracks, right?
Connecticut are said to be haunted by a black dog, and if people were to see it on more than one occasion, they would be seriously injured in a calamity such as a tree falling on them, a sudden avalanche, or the path giving out from under them, or even getting in a car accident after leaving the trail. From Yorkshire and northern England comes tales of the Barghest, a spectral black hound the size of a small bear, with eyes burning red, and the ability to change its shape into that of a headless man or a woman, or into a rabbit or a cat, a horse, or some other animal.
This is one I'm kind of familiar with, and actually I had a friend who allegedly saw this creature on a country road where it's it said that's where people mostly see these weird creatures. They said it was when they were far away. It looked like there was like a man seen on the side of the road or whatever, but as it got closer, they realized it was a dog. But when they got close enough that it was in their headlights, it ran across the road and it didn't have a head. And yeah, that's the claim. That's the eyewitness reports. But I'm not saying I believe it. That's just what I was told. So at least there's some kind of phenomena linked to seeing large dark canines on deserted roads that don't seem to that and things happen to mess with your mind, of course. But I've gone like hours and hours of driving. I drove to Dallas, Texas, in like an overnight drive, and by the time I got through Oklahoma, I realized I was starting to have visual problems because the shadows and stuff were starting to move and whatnot. So I pulled over and did the rest stop thing, but it was weird for a while there because I was like seeing like it wasn't people, but I seen like trees and stuff popping up, and I was in the middle of freaking Oklahoma. There were no trees.
When a person saw the Barghest in its canine form, it was believed that the person who saw it would die shortly thereafter. Also in the Yorkshire area comes a story of a headless dog who haunts the Evelet Bridge, howling at night and leaping from the bridge and into the water.
I think Sumami just made a confession that we all need to be aware of right now. I want an elaborate dog costume I can don and cavort down the side of Scottish roads on all fours. Yes, that's also something that could be the source of this. Maybe there's like a ancient Scottish furry cult that nobody knows about that dresses as big green dogs.
Reports claim that all who see this phantom will die within 1 year's time. Though ghost dogs are mostly seen as bad omens, there are more than a few stories that depict them as legitimate threats to people that they encounter. Such is the case of one called Padfoot, rarely seen, but heard padding around the forest trails, alley streets, and crossroads, with the sounds of a chain trailing behind him.
So we have like a Harry Potter character here, Padfoot. That's what the Grimm's name really was. What what's his name? Sirius Black. What his shapeshift form was called, Padfoot. So Joanne didn't come up with anything original. Go figure.
And occasionally emitting a sound no earthly creature could make. Those who try to make contact with it, either verbally or physically, were said to be dragged and then mauled to their death.
Oh no.
In El Dorado Canyon in Colorado, lurk the Hell Dogs, ghosts of dogs who were trained to guard claim sites in the mines, and to attack any who approach. Urban legends of explorers in the area being cornered, clawed, and even chased while driving have been spread throughout the country.
Ooh, that's interesting.
In St. Germans,
So they're like dog spirits that are bound to these mines? That sounds like something worth exploring a little bit deeper. What do you guys think? That reminds me of kind of the story on like on Congo when they had the gorillas that were guarding the mines and the people died out, but the gorillas just stayed there and kept guarding them. Like if there's a feral pack of dogs that just keeps breeding in this area and training their next generation to guard the mines.
in East Cornwall, roams Dando's dogs, a pack of spectral hounds who race through the village just before dawn and run down any that they find, dragging the poor soul to hell. And then there is Black...
And there's probably some folk memory to that too, right? Like dogs will grab you, and you know, and historically speaking, and definitely during our early days on the food chain, a pack of dogs could easily get a hold of a person and tear them apart. They still can. A bold pack of dogs will still do that these days, especially like a child or something. So telling kids to be wary of packs of dogs, yeah.
Black Shuck, perhaps the most demonic and malevolent of the ghost dogs, who haunts English coastlines, lonely country roads, rural cemeteries, marshlands, and even train tracks. Whereas others of his kind tend to resemble actual dogs, if not abnormally large ones, Black Shuck is as large as a donkey, with a wild, shaggy coat, a mouth full of prominent, sharp teeth, and eyes that glow like hellfire. Though seen as a death omen, Black Shuck enjoys being the cause of death, with one legend from August 4th of 1577 describing Shuck ransacking St. Mary's Church in Bungay, killing a man and a young...
Okay, so in the Tolkien Legendarium, there were no Barghest, but there were Barghest are from Dungeons and Dragons, but there were werewolves, and then there were wargs that were different. What the difference was is never really stated outright, but the werewolves were more prominent in the First Age. Actually, Sauron, the Lord of the Rings, had his start as the Lord of Werewolves and as one of the chief sorcerers of Morgoth, the old Dark Lord. He was this sorcerer. And he had a tower called the Tower of Werewolves. And he actually shapeshifted into a werewolf to fight a giant dog that was a lot like the Q-Shi, ironically enough, called Huon. And yeah, interesting stuff. But werewolves in the First Age, they could talk and stuff. Whether or not wargs can talk, I guess that's subjective. Eagles can talk, so...
young boy as they prayed, and wreaking havoc upon the altar, before moving on to another church in Blythborough, where its bloodshed continued. It is said that both churches still bear the scars of Black Shuck's claws.
Yeah.
But not every ghost dog is a death omen or a vengeful spirit. There are some legends of ghost dogs acting as protectors and guardians of sacred places and wayward travelers. One story from Swarcliffe related how a man traveling alone in the woods was followed by a black dog until he had emerged from the trees, and when he turned around, the dog was nowhere to be found. Years later, he had learned that a pair of criminals had intended to mug and murder him, but elected not to when they saw the large black dog in his company. The Church Grim, found in both English and Germanic folklore, is the protector of churches and hallowed...
Church Grims are about the saddest part, because you kill a dog and you bury it in your churchyard to protect it.
Guarding the grounds and the devout followers from Satan and his followers, both mortal and demon alike.
Hmm.
Even some ghost dogs who have reputations as harbingers of doom or as savage monsters can have stories told about them in a protective light.
Because they're all good boys on the inside, or good girls. Good girls and good boys. Yeah, Black Shuck's kind of a dick, but I'm sure with the right training measures, we could get Black Shuck under control. He's no dog is untrainable completely untrainable. Hey, Ben's here. Good morning, Dr. Ben.
Such as Guy Tra, also called Shag Foal. The Guy Tra is normally one for leading travelers astray, perhaps deeper into the woods or even into a deep marsh, or over the side of a cliff. But there are just as many instances of the Guy Tra coming to those who are lost in the countryside and guiding them to safety. Man's best friend has played a number of roles in mythology and folklore, but some of the most enduring in Western Europe and the United States
Black Shuck is evil, but I can fix him.
feature them as a ghostly presence, black as pitch with glowing eyes and an ominous tone. Some, like the Barghest, are there to herald the oncoming of misfortune or death.
There's your Barghest sandals. Yay!
Others, like Black Shuck, are hell-bent on chaos and bloodshed, inflicting it upon those that they come across. And then there are some, like the Church
There were
Grim,
not actually
who
any black dogs in the Sherlock Holmes Hounds of Bakerville, was there? It was like a hoax.
exist to serve as protectors and guides. Regardless of their intentions or how they may manifest,
Aw.
ghost dogs remain one of the most popular and enduring paranormal
Is he
folktales.
shooting at it?
And to this very day,
Is dude in the pork pie hat out over here shooting at my dog? Sir, put down your gun. Leave that doggo alone. I don't approve of this.
reports of ethereal black dogs in dark places who seem to vanish as quickly as they appear without a trace continue to be told throughout the world.
Alright. Yeah, that tells me I'm probably going to get copyright on the music for this. But there's something more I wanted to cover before we finish up here. And this is going to be about the Blythburgh, England Holy Trinity Church, and the legend of the ghostly hound that supposedly left its dark mark on the place. So these marks on this door, see these little black marks, are supposed to be the claw prints of a giant dog. I zoom in on this. Nope, it's not gonna let me. But you can kind of see them. There's this right here, 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 and here. That's allegedly where its paws scratched the door. There's the whole church. You know, the door. Yeah, this is in Old English. I'm not going to read it, but there's the initial print up of it. And they got they leaned into it, obviously. I would too if it was my church. It is a pretty old church. Well, let's read what they have to say. Stories and sightings of ghostly and demonic black dogs are woven through folklore and mythology of the British Isles, like we just spent the last hour going over. Perhaps the most ancient and well-known of these entities is Black Shuck. Tales of Black Shuck, or simply Shuck, haunt rural East Anglia, the coast and countryside of the counties of Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk, and Cambridgeshire. Descriptions of the creature's nature and appearance vary across time and space. What remains consistent, however, are the descriptions of its tremendous size. You wonder why I want to fix him. Sorry, I couldn't help that. Whew, getting hot in here. No, I'm not into animals, but I did have a werewolf thing when I was younger. I liked werewolves. I'm not a furry, though. I do like the concept of shape-shifting. Gotta be Mystique from X-Men, so I can change into a werewolf or a bat, like Sauron. Let me see, where was I? Almost that of a horse. Its shaggy black fur and fiery red eyes. Some describe it as a guardian or guide to the lost, while others say it is an omen of death. Its name comes from the Old English suka or sku, meaning devil and terrifying respectively. Oh man, you gotta do a super chat on that. What's 3,000? Oh my gosh, that's huge. LOL. Furry side coming out. Yeah, if I was a furry though, I think I'd be a moth. I'd be a moth furry if I had to be a furry. If I'd like make a fursona, be a moth. Maybe a bumblebee, but probably a moth. Thank you for the super chat though. Appreciate ya. The residents, no, bounces. Yeah, the ad just pops up in the middle of it. The residents of Blythburgh favor the latter after a devastating event in 1577. On the 4th of August, during Sunday service in a parish church of Suffolk, England, most of the village had gathered. A tremendous storm rose up and battered Blythburgh's Holy Trinity Church. Lightning repeatedly struck the church, dislodging the church's spire and causing it to fall through the roof upon the gathered congregation. Amid the darkness and destruction, illuminated only by the stunning flashes of lightning, a looming, shaggy black dog is said to have appeared. Black Shuck rushed upon worshippers, knelt in prayer before dashing through the central aisle and out of the church, leaving long black scorch marks upon the large wooden doors. These hellish claw marks are known locally as the devil's fingerprints and remain to this day. According to experimental archaeology and researchers who studied protective witch marks, these tear-shaped symbols are more likely to have been placed upon the church's door intentionally with a candle or taper. Ironically, such an intentional burn was likely intended to protect the church from curses, demons as opposed to being caused by them. Throughout the village of Blythburgh, as well as in the nearby town of Bungay, which suffered similar horrors that same night, images of Black Shuck have become iconic. Bungay's coat of arms features the creature, as does the town hall's weather vane, which continues to attract lightning. Well, weather vanes do tend to do that. It's almost like that's their purpose. But yeah, so that was. Let's see. We had.
I heard the Lord say this on December.
Not that. We had a lot. Black Shuck. We had Grimm. We had Kushi. Yeah, a lot of spirits. The Barghest. A lot of canid spirits and canids from beyond the grave, as it sounds like. At least with the Grimm, it's an undead thing. Do you believe in ghost dogs? Do you believe in the supernatural? Do you believe that there were giant black fairy hounds roaming the Scottish Highlands? Do you believe a demonic black dog attacked that church? Do you think that mysterious, strange creatures roam the back byways of country roads around the world with no heads, apparently? And lastly, do you think that there is somewhere out there a magical giant Kushi tooth that can be used to cure all illnesses that got lost in Canada? Let me know in the comments below. And yeah, got my hair all tangled in my lashes. Yeah, please remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time.